So I try my best to make this video without such a clickbaity title, but it's kind of hard when I kind of feel like this is a clickbaity phone. As as I've said in the past, and I've been talking about it for almost a year now, I've been using the Zenfone 9, and in my last video, I mentioned that this phone is great. The Zenfone 9 has been a great phone, and I thoroughly enjoy using it, and will continue using it probably for the foreseeable future. And when ASUS announced the Zenfone 10, I said, oh, great. What exactly are they going to change about something that they've already created that I like that I like a lot? And I, watched the little keynote. And at the end of the keynote, this is what they displayed. And in my last video, I talked about how a lot of these things were kind of just repeats and maybe slight tweaks or modifications. But I got to the point where I was playing around with my current phone, my Zenfone 9, and I saw that I had the option for Connect's accessories, I believe is what it's called. I'll put a screenshot on the screen right now. But then that made me think about, well, wait a minute. When they announced the Zenfone 10, looking over there in the bottom right corner, you see that Connect's case. So I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, can the Connect's case work with the Zenfone 9? And my assumption is yes, it can. And that further got me thinking about, okay, you released this new phone, and not only are you talking about a case that works with the phone in terms of your final placemat to summarize everything new and exciting about the phone. Not only are you talking about a phone case, but the phone case that you're talking about works on your previous device. So clearly, ASUS ran out of things to talk about on this particular screen with the release of this particular phone. So I really do question, like, well, how much does ASUS care if they're resorting to filling this space, which is, a limited amount of space, with something as trivial as a phone case, which works with their previous year's phone. So I thought that was pretty interesting and also kind of sad. But the unfortunate truth is, I don't think it's ASUS's fault. The way that things are now, you have to remain constant. You have to remain relevant, I guess I should say. So you have to release something every year, and if you don't, people start to forget about you. And before you know it, 2 years have gone by, and people, oh, what happened to such and such? And of course, the company needs to make money, and selling last year's phone this year potentially at a maybe slightly discounted price isn't what they want to do. They want to sell you something new, even if new is subjective, and you end up with a placement like this: some new stuff, some repeat stuff, and some things that they didn't talk about last year, but technically were available on last year's phone. But because they ran out of stuff to talk about this year, they decided to include these features, which again work on last year's phone or are part of last year's phone. So one of the selling points for the Zenfone 9 for me was its compact size. This year, the phone is almost identical in terms of size. The previous screen showed some of the specs, so I'm not going to get into all of those. But another huge selling point of the phone for me was the headphone jack. And I got to notebookcheck.net, and occasionally I'll read some of their articles and hear this person title this article ASUS Zenfone 10, a compact smartphone with compromises. And initially I was like, well, what exactly are we compromising on? And when you scroll down, they'll talk about some of the positives. And as I just mentioned, the headphone jack is one of the positives. But the unfortunate truth, and I have them right here, is that even though, and you're not going to be able to see it, but even though I do enjoy using the headphone jack, I've gotten to the point now where I currently own three of these little USB-C to headphone jack adapters. One made by Apple, one made by Anchor, and one made by Google. And because all of the devices that I use have USB-C ports on them, I honestly just keep the little dongle permanently attached to my headphones, and it's almost like it's just one thing. So any device that I'm using, I'm able to just plug it in with the dongle on, and I'm good to go. So it's sad to say that for me, I don't know if the headphone jack is as important as it was a year ago when I bought the Zenfone 9, because of these dongles. The way I view the headphone jack is kind of the same way that I viewed the SD card in smartphones. At some point, cell phones started coming with more internal storage at the base level. And at that point, it's like, well, I don't really need an SD card anymore. And for phones that don't have SD cards anymore, it doesn't bother me much because storage, internal storage got cheap. On to the compromises that this author was talking about. I said it in my last video that it would have been nice for the Zenfone 10 to have eSIM capabilities. I've said it in the past, and I know I'm always repeating myself, it sounds like, but who knows? Maybe you haven't seen any of my other videos. What Apple did with the iPhone 14 in the United States was the wrong way to go from a consumer standpoint. Removing the SIM card, no. But for most phones, you have one physical SIM and one eSIM. That is the ideal way to go. And ASUS decided to say, well, we're going to have give you the option to have two physical SIMs if that's what you want. I actually do use both physical SIM slots, but it would be nice to have that eSIM capability. This person said the voice quality is also not entirely convincing for various reasons. I'm not completely sure what they mean by that. I will say for my Zenfone 9, the only issues that I've ever had in terms of voice quality is when talking to people on speakerphone. I don't think I've ever mentioned that before, but it is an issue that I frequently have, that if I'm on speakerphone, the person on the other end is constantly having a hard time hearing me. And of course, the solution to that is just not using speakerphone. So I'll either hold the phone to my ear or I'll use a handy dandy pair of wired headphones, and those issues are completely mitigated. The last thing that this author talks about is the fact that the phone still has a USB 2.0 port. This author also talks about the fact that, well, if you want a compact phone, yes, the Zenfone 9 or 10 is an option, but you honestly, and I too, have to look at the Galaxy S23. And I actually have a S23 over there. But when I was holding it, I was like, man, this thing is really compact. Like, I know the screen size is 6.1 inches, but if you look at the screen, the borders are relatively narrow. So that allows the phone to be a little bit smaller. And when you come over here for the S23, it's actually, what, 2/10 of a millimeter shorter than the Zenfone 10. So it's technically a smaller phone. It is a little bit wider. And given what we know about Samsung in terms of their longevity of support and even heck pricing, you have to consider the Galaxy S23 at this point. As I was talking about before in terms of one of the compromises, the Galaxy does give you the option to have an eSIM. When you come to ASUS's page to potentially buy your Zenfone, availability is an issue. So they've announced it. If you come here to buy now, screen pops up. It looks like it's available in Taiwan. Okay, makes sense. Parts of Western Europe, looks like it's available. Okay. Eastern Europe, some parts it's available, not in other parts. And over in America, whether it's the United States or down in South America, it's not available yet. The other thing that I was mentioning a few moments ago was that Connects case, or the Connects accessories right here in the middle of the screen, kind of have the same issue here where if you want to buy them, Taiwan looks like it's available, but everywhere else it is not. Some places in Western Europe, some places it isn't. Some places in Eastern Europe, some places it isn't. And in terms of the Americas, it's not even available to show that it's coming soon. So I don't know. Does that mean that the phone will be coming here, but the Connects accessories won't? I think that's all that I really have to say, that the Zenfone 9 is a good phone. It's not ASUS's fault that they had to release something this year. The Zenfone 9 was a really good phone. The Zenfone 10, I'm sure, is a good phone. However, the differences between it and last year's phone aren't great enough, in my opinion, to pay what ASUS is asking for right now. If you go to eBay, you are able to find some devices, but be aware, and we can kind of see it right here, that for the Zenfone 9, you have all these different models right here. For the Galaxy S23, you have a bunch of models, but for the Zenfone 10 over here, you only have that one model. So the phone that you purchase, if you choose to purchase it today, probably isn't the phone that's specifically designed for your region.